I've done all of Brighton.
Hello there, you loose units. How are you? Welcome to another episode of Spicy Boy Reviews. I'm, of course, your host, Andrew Iles. I forget what number episode we're up to, but here we are yet again, and we'll continue to be here as much as we possibly can. Yes, the world is interesting at the moment. Living here in Melbourne. When I record this, we're just gone into a 5-day lockdown, so we'll see how that plays out by the time this episode comes out. So at the moment, cinemas are closed for 5 days. Lucky I got this movie in as quickly as I possibly could, so I could do this episode, and fuck it, let's just get straight into it. This movie this week is Wrong Turn, The Foundation. Jennifer and her 5 friends decide to take time out from their own self-importance and have a weekend of virtue signalling small-town locals to hike a trail in the mountains, only to be hunted by the Foundation, a self-sufficient community of people who have lived in the mountains for hundreds of years and have become extremely hostile to outsiders. Jennifer's father knows something is wrong when she doesn't return to remind him of his white privilege, so he decides to go up to the mountain to find his daughter, despite being warned by local townspeople. In a cat-and-mouse chase, trying to escape a cult of ye-old Viking hunters, will the rich privileged discriminated against millennials get out in one piece? Or are they doomed to be killed by forest booby traps and hunted and murdered by lower-class yokels? Let's find out in what seems to be a wrong turn indeed. And that was a synopsis for Wrong Turn, The Foundation. This is the 7th film in the Wrong Turn franchise, and it's a reboot, so it really has nothing to do with the previous films, which is great because I haven't seen any of them. I know it's a series and it's quite popular, but yeah, this one is a reboot because God knows we need more of them these days. It's directed by Mike P. Nelson, I believe that's his name, and he's got a lot of short films under his belt, which I think this might be his first feature or it's his second feature or something, which seems to be a trend with directors in Hollywood. What happens is they make a bunch of short films, or one really good short film, gets a bit of notoriety by festivals, and then a smaller studio, usually like Blumhouse or whatever, they will give them a feature horror-length film to see how they do, and if that does really well and makes a little bit of cash, gets some notoriety, then they'll be given a big studio film like a Marvel film or Star Wars or whatever and get them to fuck it up. Yeah, it starts with a bunch of people who I didn't recognise, but, you know, that's not surprising for a horror film because these people are just cannon fodder, lambs to the slaughter, getting picked off one by one. I knew that going in. It's a horror film, for God's sake. But these particular crew is an annoying, insufferable, diversity all sorts crew of millennials. I mean, Jesus Christ, the amount of times that they virtue signalled lower-class citizens in the small town was fucking insufferable, okay? And it's almost like the writer of this film, who also wrote the previous Wrong Turn films, all fucking 6 of them before this one, it's almost like he wants us to beg for them to get killed, because I sure as hell fucking did. They were insufferable and really annoying. Also, side note, the writer for this film also wrote The Marine, the John Cena action flick, and Halloween 4, Return of Mike Myers, which I thought was interesting. We're introduced to our lead protagonist of our crew. I can't remember her name, I think it was Jennifer. I'm just going to call her Privileged White Girl because that's exactly what she was. She's the leftist of the left. I mean, you couldn't get any more fucking left if you tried. She was so woke that she could see alternate dimensions, you know what I mean? And as I said, they were a diversity mixed bag of all sorts, all millennials. But of course, it's a horror film. Not that there's any jocks in this crew, but we did have the token douchebag. That's right, this guy is a fucking idiot. He provokes all the hillbillies in the town. He throws an empty beer bottle at a person who's hanging around their car, and he huffs and puffs and gets really upset that his girlfriend takes too many selfies. Who also, his girlfriend, is a doctor in this. How do we know? Well, it's because female protagonist, privileged white girl, talks down to the hillbillies in the town to say, they're not dumb, they're smart, because one of us is a doctor. I demand respect. Because that's how you get it. You just demand it. You don't earn it. But yeah, this crew is so fucking annoying. They're very annoying. I almost had an aneurysm with how hard I rolled my eyes constantly in the film. Then we get a montage of our lovable, diverse crew hiking, having a good time. It almost looked like it was a Corona beer commercial. And of course, it comes up, they want to go off-trail, because that always works out in these kind of films. They want to go off-trail because they heard rumour that there was a Confederate gravesite nearby. They probably wanted to go there, pull some fucking statues down or something, I don't know. But anyway, they go off the beaten trail, and that's when the killing starts. That's right, our first victim, he's crushed by a massive boulder or a log, and then we cue the infighting. If left-wing millennials, if I've learned anything from them, it's the fact that if there's no one around to virtue signal, they'll fucking turn on each other. And they do. Of course, there's another cliche, overnight when they camp out in the graveyard, oddly enough, all their phones go missing the next morning. Very clever, I see what you're doing there, Mr. Writer Man. No Google Maps for these cunts. Now, douchebag man gets captured, and he goes missing for a little bit, and our diversity crew, they stumble upon a barn with all old belongings of previous victims, for what it's made out to be anyway. And I kind of like when horror movies do that. I don't know why, it's kind of twisted and stuff, but it's like, it gives off this has been happening a lot. This is like a cycle that these people hunt people who wander on their land or on the mountain. It's like the Dusk Till Dawn thing at the end, the reveal, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it. So they stumble upon this barn full of shit from previous victims, and I don't know why, but in horror films, I kind of dig when that happens. Then douchebag is found, by the way. He's being carried away by what looks like two furries, and then the group confront these two guys, these two hunters, I suppose you can call them, and then douchebag fucking annihilates one of the furries' heads. That's right, we're talking, it's non-existent anymore. He pummels it into the fucking ground. Then they're obviously chased, and then they get captured by these furry hunters. And then we go to their little hometown, their village, if you will, and then it's we learn a bit about who these people are, known as the Foundation. Side note here, before we go into that, there was a few things that really pissed me off in the filmmaking side of this thing. I noticed that every time a character had their back turned and were yelling at the people whose reactions we were seeing on the camera, every time the person yelling turned their head, you could see the ADR was completely out of sync with what they were saying. You can usually get away with it if you don't see their lips moving, and it was kind of out of focus. And if it happened the first time, it happens a lot in films, I let it go, whatever. But this happened like fucking 3 or so times. It was really annoying me that the ADR was completely out of sync. It just seemed like a rush edit job. When I see that sort of stuff, it just does my head in. Also, in the hunting aspect of the film, I suppose the second act, you could say, it seemed like the colour was drained out of the film and the contrast was shot up. Usually in horror films, they do that to drain the redness of the blood, because there's usually a lot of blood splatter and brains and all that sort of stuff. So to not gross people out too much, they usually drain the colour a little bit. But honestly, I don't remember really much blood being in this film, if any, especially in the second act when they were draining the colour. I don't remember seeing any. We saw brains like 3 fucking times, which is a weird thing, because there was like 3 skull crushings in this film. The director, I suppose, had a hard-on for that. I'm not sure why. But yeah, hardly any blood. I don't know why they drained the colour, but it just looked very drab, which, a lot of straight-to-DVD horror films look. And I don't know what the choice was behind that. But anyway, just something I noticed. Oh yeah, if we couldn't like douchebag anymore, there was a part in the film where his girlfriend, the one that takes all the selfies and annoys him, falls into a pit full of spikes, and she's very, very badly injured. And what does douchebag do? That's fucking right. He runs off to go find help. And of course, she dies. What a lovely dude. Why wouldn't you want to date this guy? They're all eventually rounded up by what seems to be the cast of Vikings, and they're taken to this little village. And then we find out that these guys are sort of like some ancient civilization of doomsday preppers. So what they did is they turned away from society, they created their own village up in the mountains, and put booby traps everywhere so no outsiders could come in and stuff. And pretty much they were riding out they felt like they were riding out the apocalypse and letting America destroy itself while they rode it out. In fact, these guys probably are fucking onto something when you think about it. This movie obviously has a heavy metaphor of nature versus nurture. You know, who's the real bad guys in this? Is it modern society? Is it this ancient Viking civilization? The answer, Tik Tok. And we meet our cult leader. I'm just going to call him Scandinavian Bruce Campbell because that's exactly what he looked and sounded like. And we also discovered that, fucking spoiler alert, what they were doing was just defending their land. When they brought it up in this little trial section, they were telling the millennials that they weren't trying to kill them, they were trying to scare them off. And it's actually the millennials who drew first blood.
Murdoch, I'm coming to get you.
That's right, the douchebag crushed that guy's skull. And upon reflection, thinking back to it, yeah, they didn't really kill them at all. They were just sort of scaring them off, I suppose. Injuring them, sure. They're an ancient kind of race, so whatever. But yeah, it was interesting that it's like, oh, a little bit of reveal that the millennials are the bad guys here, which makes more sense of why the writer wants us to hate them and to wish for their deaths. So it seems that this woke folk were judging a book by its cover. Naughty, naughty millennials. Anyway, some of them die by trial, these hipster millennials, and white privileged girl, she bargains her survival to stay with the troop, and she bargains with her womb. And Scandinavian Bruce Campbell accepts. Ew. Anyway, 6 weeks passes, and white girl's dad, played by Matthew Modine, he rounds up a couple of locals in the town and goes up the mountain to go find his daughter. Then the third act happens, and this is easily the best part of the film, you know, because it's really tense. It's like a cat and mouse sort of hide and seek kind of thing. It's them trying to escape. It's Daddy Modine and privileged white girl trying to get out of this little Viking village. And I tell you what, privileged white girl, she goes full fucking Rambo on their ass. It's really good. It's kind of a mix of Metal Gear Solid and Lara Croft. I really dug it. Anyway, Scandinavian Bruce Campbell is hot on their heels because privileged white girl is preggers with his child. So, yeah, he's trying to hunt them down. They all have like a first blood, I suppose, in the forest. And yada, yada, yada. People die. It's pretty gruesome. Pretty fucking awesome, actually, as well. And then that's it. I'm not going to sort of spoil really what happens if you really want to go see it. But, yeah, the third act is pretty sick. Then, just before the credits, we get a really long, drawn-out, one-shot, gruesome murder scene that is really good, and we were begging for it. I won't tell you why, but it was really fucking cool. And that's when I think the blood came out. I remember anyway, the first time I actually saw full-on blood in the film. And it's a cool scene. It's a long one shot, and it's pretty badass. So Wrong Turn, that was Wrong Turn, The Foundation. Was it good? Not really. Was it bad? Yeah, but not completely horrible or a piece of shit. The acting was okay, I suppose, the best you could expect for a horror film like this. The characters ate all sorts of ass. There was really no development. I didn't like them. Privileged white girl was good. Daddy Modine was all right. Scandinavian Bruce Campbell was threatening. He was a good bad guy. Antagonist. Yeah, it's a bit icky here and there, but it's no Hills Have Eyes, if you know what I mean. Yeah, it's all right. I probably wouldn't go to the cinema to see it. Watch it on streaming service, but I don't know, 2 stars, I guess, maybe 1.5. Wasn't great. But yeah, the third act is the only thing worth seeing in this film. That's it. That's the movie review. That's Wrong Turn Foundation. I haven't seen any of the Wrong Turns, and I probably fucking won't. Even though I do love horror, it's not really my jam. That kind of horror, I suppose. Yeah, write down below if you've seen any of the Wrong Turns, or what's your favourite Wrong Turn between 1 and 7, or what's your favourite fucking horror film series? Okay, I'd love to hear from you guys. Comment below. Of course, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your love and support is what keeps this channel alive. And as always, stay spooky, kids.